When I was born, I was 6 weeks late, meaning I was in the womb for 10.5 months, which is way too long. So on the way out, I got stuck, meaning they had to use this machine called a ventouse to grab onto my skull and literally pull me out. That left me with permanent brain damage, so I've grown up with an array of disorders such as epilepsy, autism, cerebral palsy down my left side. I've had to grow up with them since day one.
I was visiting my grandmother in England. We lived in Malaysia at the time, and we just got into the car when I had a massive brain hemorrhage. My brother was messing around and he was teasing me, and I said, "Adam, stop it, I've got a headache." And it was massive, and I didn't realise how massive it was until I started throwing up. And they called the ambulance. They took me to a hospital. They did all these tests on me. And there was a kid in the same bed next to me with the same thing, AVM. One day, probably near January, he died. And I woke up with the nurses and doctors all around him, and I was told to go back to sleep.
So when I was 9.5, I was playing with the big boys in the local field. Started playing a game called Slidies. We got slide tackle each other. This one kid lunged in. I jumped up. He caught me in midair. I came down pretty hard on my right arm, and it snapped twice, effectively. It went right through.
I don't really know what it would be like to be any different, but the best way I can try and describe of how I feel day to day is basically, if you've ever been the only drunk person while everyone else around you is sober, it's like that, but just 24/7.
We were meant to be on holiday, and I just thought, I'm sorry for my family who are having to go through this for me. I didn't know what was going to happen. But in the end, it was like, well, thank God it was me, because I came out of it, not like the other kid.
I still have trauma about it. I still have, moments in the daytime or at night where I wake up in kind of a bit of a cold sweat, or on the day where I just have a sort of moment of crippling terror, I guess. Terror and shock. That's the main thing that stayed with me. It hasn't really gone away. And I was always very confident, outgoing, very outdoors kind of person. And there's like a bit of a check to my mortality in a way.
I mean, I feel lucky to be alive because obviously without modern science, I wouldn't be here today. And sure, they didn't do their jobs perfectly and gave me a bunch of conditions that I have to deal with in daily life, but I'm not wheelchair bound. I can feed myself. I can live alone without a carer, so I don't really have any right to complain.
And, life is so fleeting. You can be taken just like that. I know that I was very, very lucky to be where I was when I was at the time.
You heal and the skin literally heals. That's what forms a scar. And when it heals over, you do kind of get tougher. You have that scar tissue. And in a way, it's kind of a badge of honor, but also it's just a marker of a struggle that you've been through and overcome. So at the time, it felt like it was a big knock to my confidence. But once I've recovered, I thought that I was in fact stronger than ever, and that it had been a good thing to go through because it had made me stronger, and that I knew suffering and had overcome it, and I was stronger for it.